Hello guys, in this video let's discuss about transactions in Azure Cosmos DB. And guys, important difference in SQL Server or Oracle, that is in relational databases, transactions occur across different tables, but in Azure Cosmos DB transactions are scoped to a particular container and specific logical partition within that container. I know guys, this is confusing, and let's try to understand it with an example. Let's discuss about transactions in relational databases, that is MS SQL Server or Oracle or MySQL. So assume there are two tables, that is employee and department tables, and these are the records in employee table and these are the records in department table. And now we want to delete a record for admin department, and we also want to delete all employees from admin department. So we will perform this action in transaction, that is we will first delete employees from employee table for department admin, then we will delete record from department table for admin, and then we will either commit or roll back this transaction. And the important thing is we can apply transactions across tables. And now let's discuss about transactions in Azure Cosmos DB. So again, container in a Azure Cosmos DB is table in SQL Server or Oracle. And now guys, the important thing, transactions in Azure Cosmos DB, they are scoped to a particular container and a particular partition within that container. So guys, in relational database, here you could see we could apply transaction across multiple tables. Okay, but here transactions, they are scoped to a particular container and particular partition within that container. That means as a part of transaction, we cannot update data in two different containers, and also we cannot update data in two different partitions. So I know guys, this is a bit confusing, and so let's see it in action. And now let's understand what we are going to do. So first we are in Azure portal and we have this database, test database. Under that we have this C users container, and under atoms we have three records. Okay, and the third record, so it is for user David Kent and city is equal to Berlin. And guys, here city is our partition key. And now let's imagine this user, that is David Kent, has now left our organization and another user has joined it. So we want to delete this user's record, that is David Kent's record, and we want to add a new record. But we want to make sure that deleting this record and adding this new record, it should happen in a same transaction. So either both the operations, they should succeed or both should get failed. And now guys, we are in Visual Studio. Okay, and again, just a quick recap, transactions are scoped to a container and also to a specific partition in that container. So we want to make sure that the records which we are adding, deleting or updating, those should have the same value of partition key. So for example, in this case, as we are deleting this user's record and it has city is equal to Berlin, so we can add a record with city is equal to Berlin only. So what steps we will perform? So we will first begin a transaction batch, then we will add a delete query to this batch, that is to delete David Kent's record. Then we will create new user record query and we will add it to this batch, and finally we will execute this transaction. And guys, again, we have this connection string to connect to our Cosmos DB. Then we created Cosmos client using that connection string. Then we created Cosmos container using the Cosmos client, and using Cosmos container we can add records, we can update record, we can delete records, etc. And using Cosmos container only we will create our transaction batch, and let's do that. So I will say where transaction batch is equal to, say, Cosmos container dot create transaction batch, And if you observe, we need to provide partition key over here. So we'll say new partition key, and in our case the partition key is this city value, that is Berlin. So let's copy it and let's paste it over here. And now I will say transaction batch dot delete item, and to this we need to provide the ID of the document which we want to delete. So let's again go to the Cosmos and let's copy this ID. And now let's create new user record. So I already copied this code, so it's a simple straightforward code. So we have simply created an instance of this class user, and now let's add this user record in transaction batch. So I'll say transaction batch dot create item, for this type is user, and let's provide this value, that is user. And guys, observe one thing, while creating an item we are not providing the partition key, because we have already provided partition key when we created this transaction batch itself. And finally let's execute this transaction. So we'll say await transaction batch dot execute async, and to this I have to say using, I'll say where response is equal to. That's it. So let's add a debugger on line number 41 and let's run our program, and we will also check the value of this variable response as well. So let's run. And you can see our program is executing and debugger has been hit. So let's cross check in Azure portal. So let's go to portal and let me click on edit filter and apply filter. That means we are rerunning this select star query, and if you see again we have only 3 records. But if I now check the third record, you see earlier it was David Kent, but now it's John Root. That means our transaction has been successfully executed. And if I go to Visual Studio and if I check the content of this variable response and observe this status code, that is okay. That means again our transaction is successful.